Hi everyone, I'm Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update here on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. Thanks for joining us during this busy week. It's been an important week and disconcerting week for those of us interested in upholding the rule of law. Judicial Watch is a watchdog organization that tries to keep the government in check, accountable to the law. A lot of problems exposed this week with the raid on the lawyer of President Trump, with the release of this Comey book, with a uranium-1 cover-up by the Obama, not the Obama, but the Trump administration, namely the Sessions Justice Department and the State Department. And then I want to talk to you also about the issue of Syria, which is back in the news because we're at war or about to go to war again. We're in an increased way in Syria. Well, Judicial Watch exposed just how we got into the situation with Syria and what caused the terrible situation there with the rise of ISIS and such. And frankly, it was Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton that caused it. And we've got the documents to prove it, and something well worth going over. But first up is the big news this week about the raid on the home and the office and the hotel room of Mr. Cohen, who was Donald Trump's personal lawyer. And it was an extraordinary development because it was done by supposedly the Southern District of New York, or authorized by officials there in the U.S. Attorney's Office. The FBI did the raid and supposedly had been signed off on by Rod Rosenstein after being referred to him by Robert Mueller, Special Counsel Operation. So this is how it works. Mr. Mueller gets information about Mr. Trump, and all of a sudden it gets laundered into the Justice Department, and the Justice Department, because they're afraid of Mueller and opposing him, say yes to everything, it looks like, and then do this raid on Trump's lawyer's home and office and such. Now look, it's an extraordinary development for the lawyer of anyone to be raided by the FBI. It happens, but it happens in circumstances not anything like what we're facing here. A mob lawyer, someone who's affecting a crime or maybe impacting, has evidence of a crime or is participating in a crime, lawyers for terrorists. Those are the sorts of people that get raided. Here you've got, at best, allegations, according to the published reports, that Mr. Cohen gave money in a transaction before the election to prevent women who said they were having affairs with Donald Trump from publicizing information. And the allegation is, well, you can't do that because those payments would be in-kind campaign contributions by the lawyer to the presidential campaign, which I don't know is true or not legally. I think you might be able to make that case. I think it's a difficult case to make, and it's certainly not the sort of case that would warrant the extraordinary step of the FBI raiding the lawyer's office of the President of the United States. Now, you may wonder, what about attorney-client privilege? Well, that's why it's so rarely done. And supposedly there will be teams in place that will prevent and secure attorney-client related material and prevent the wrong people from seeing it or it being misused. Well, don't you believe it? I think this is a way of the deep state getting revenge on Donald Trump. This president has criticized the DOJ and FBI's handling and mishandling of the various investigations, the slow walking of documents to Congress. And then the agency, within a week, raids his lawyer's office. And this Mr. Cohen has been Trump's lawyer for a decade. And with the raid, Cohen now presumably is the subject of an investigation. So now they've torn asunder, in many ways, the attorney-client relationship between President Trump and his lawyer. He's been cut off. Knowing Trump, he's probably going to still use him as his lawyer. But the goal is to make that difficult. And Mueller, if you've been watching any of these videos or tracking what we say or what I say on Twitter, I don't think much of the Mueller operation. But the dishonesty here of using the Justice Department, laundering charges that Mueller knows he wouldn't have been able to get authorization to directly investigate. And getting the Justice Department to do his dirty work up in New York is, to me, just is a dramatic example as to why the Mueller investigation is out of control and needs to be shut down. Practically speaking, he doesn't answer to anyone who's been appointed under the Constitution of the United States. If you look at the special counsel regulations, go over and look at them. You can look them up. And I don't have them in front of me, but I recall specifically they say the Justice Department shall now not supervise Mueller or the special counsel on a day-to-day basis. As I said before, how does that work constitutionally speaking? And now Rod Rosenstein is in for a pound, in for a penny, in for a penny, in for a pound with Mueller, and is refusing to say no to anything he wants to do. We've talked about the CYA memo he wrote back in August of 2017 to justify after the fact the raid and investigation of Paul Manafort, the raid of Manafort's home. Remember, they went in an early morning raid with guns drawn, photographed his suits, and now they're investigating payments the president's lawyer may have made to women. What does that have to do with Russia? Absolutely nothing. So now the president has a special counsel and a Justice Department is just figuring out a way to put him in jail. Not because they have evidence of crimes, but because they think he shouldn't be there. Now, I don't think Rod Rosenstein wants to put the president in jail directly. I don't think Jeff Sessions, obviously not. But they are frozen in place by the poor decisions they've made, and they're afraid to confront Mueller. And this is why the president should step in and order that Rosenstein fire Mueller or fix the special counsel regulations to make him answerable to and accountable to the American people. And again, this is just one additional reason to do that. We've got the FISA Clinton DNC dossier used to target Trump, also used presumably by Mr. Mueller. Why would that corrupt misuse of that dossier before the FISA courts not be a reason to shut Mueller down? You know, there are a lot of options the president can exercise. I think he's in court this week. He has a lawyer in court just today trying to protect his documents up in New York. And he just pardoned today Scooter Libby, the former chief of staff to Vice President Cheney, who was prosecuted for lying to investigators under the Bush administration. Turns out, according to the documents that are out there, and I didn't realize this had happened, one of the key witnesses against him says that she was lied to and her testimony would have been dramatically different. And it was testimony that helped convict them. So the president pardoned him, Mr. Libby, today, which raises the issue. So you shut Mueller down, or how else can you fix the situation? You pardon anyone who's being targeted by Mueller or the Justice Department as a result of Mueller's referrals. Pardon everybody. Now, it may mean that people who did things wrong don't get prosecuted. But I don't even think those people can be fairly prosecuted by this Mueller operation because of the obsessive focus on President Trump and the desperation to get convictions to justify its desperate focus and continued existence to try to destroy President Trump. You know what's disappointing? Congress hasn't done anything on Mueller. Last I checked, there were some senators who don't like President Trump to begin with in the Republican Party in the Senate who are advancing legislation or threatening to advance legislation to protect Mueller from being fired. There's zero oversight of Mueller from Congress. Zero oversight. Zero oversight. So once again, it's up to Judicial Watch to do all the work, to carry the load on our shoulders in terms of oversight for the special counsel. We've sued for records about his collusions with James Comey. We've sued for records about his budget. We've sued for other records about what Comey was up to, obviously. We sued for asking, we have FOIAs, dozens of FOIAs related to Mueller's investigation. Congress isn't doing any of that. Instead, its leaders are coming out and defending the indefensible, which is Mueller's extreme efforts to get President Trump. And, the president is rightly livid of this abuse of power to target him. And the Justice Department doesn't want to do the right thing. The Mueller operation isn't going to do the right thing. So it may be up to the president to do it. And in the meantime, Judicial Watch will provide the oversight. And along those lines, you've got the additional outrage of this Comey book. Now, why is the Comey book an outrage? Well, people have a right to publish books, right? Well, they don't have a right to take documents out of the government and misuse them, which is what Mr. Comey did. Remember those memos he wrote supposedly about his conversations with the president? The president denies, I think, the accuracy of those memos, but he took those records with him. Those were FBI records. He wasn't allowed to take them. And in fact, he, by his own admission, leaked them to get a special counsel appointed to target the President of the United States. How do we know he wasn't supposed to take those records? A, as a watchdog organization, very much conversant with the law on records, we understand when you can take records and when you can't, when they're government records and when they're not. Secondly, the Justice Department agrees with us, because when we asked for the Comey memos for ourselves and the Daily Caller News Foundation, train going by, the Justice Department came back at us and said, A, you can't have them because they're Mueller's investigation records now. So again, protecting Mueller. Secondly, you can't have them because our argument is, look, at least the Flynn memo was a memo that supposedly memorialized a conversation Comey had with President Trump about General Flynn. He authorized the leak of that memo through a friend to the New York Times. So the New York Times gets to know about the memo or get the details of it, but not a public interest group like Judicial Watch or the American people, or our client, the Daily Caller News Foundation, or CNN, who's also suing. And the Justice Department came back to us and said that leak was unauthorized, and they compared it to the WikiLeaks leaks, which were all crimes. So you've got the Justice Department saying that Comey, not in so many words, indirectly committed a crime, yet nothing's done. And so he takes these records, he leaks them, he steals them, he leaks them illegally, and now he's using these same records to write this book about President Trump. And the book isn't even out yet, but it's being reported on, so I haven't read the book, but it looks interesting to me in the sense that Comey, at least according to his interview with George Stephanopoulos this week, talks about the meeting he had where he talked about this dossier, the Clinton DNC dossier with the president. In my view, he was trying to blackmail the president, saying, hey, I got this dirt on you. It was a meeting he set up with the president to be alone with the president. And then raised these outrageous issues in the dossier about prostitutes in Russia. And the president, according to Comey, was upset about it and said you should investigate that because that's not true. And somehow that is seen as unusual by the liberal media who hates Trump and James Comey who hates Trump. But Mr. Comey didn't tell him that those allegations came from the Clinton DNC dossier, paid for with campaign funds to discredit him, laundered into the FBI and Justice Department, that came from sources in Russia. So you've got the Russians targeting Trump with malicious lies, And James Comey walks into, doesn't tell him about it till just about before he's about to become president. And the president and Trump is the bad guy for reacting strongly to it. The president said today it was his great honor to fire Comey. Comey was right. He was right to fire Comey. I mean, Comey did so many things wrong. In the book, he acknowledges that one of his decisions about whether to talk about the Clinton investigation, which I don't think he should have been talking about, was based on the fact he thought Clinton was going to win. Politics. See, this is the thing about Comey. He'll go after anyone. He'll go after anyone. He went after Clinton while protecting her at the same time. So he went after her just enough to say, hey, look, I'm independent, but not enough to do the right thing and prosecute her or recommend a prosecution. Not that it was just his job. I mean, the arrogance of this man is astonishing. And I guess my concern is the legalities of what he's done and what he did. And when you look at the hatred that Mr. Comey has for President Trump, it's easy to understand why his FBI and Justice Department was ruined ethically in terms of being misused to go after President Trump. You had Comey, who was a Hillary Clinton, Mr. McCabe, who was compromised. You had Peter Strzok, who was an anti-Trump, pro-Hillary Clinton activist. Same thing with Lisa Page, a top lawyer, top deputy to Andrew Comey. No, Andrew McCabe, excuse me. So this is we've got this major crisis over at DOJ and FBI that's been exposed in terms of the past with the Obama administration with the Comey book. Because Comey has demonstrated he was a terrible FBI director, and the president should have fired him even sooner than he did. But secondly, with the raid on the Trump office, the Justice Department and the FBI are still in crisis. So, and compare and contrast the treatment of President Trump's lawyer and that attack on President Trump directly with the treatment of Hillary Clinton. By the way, Hillary Clinton's lawyers had government documents they didn't have a right to have. They destroyed government documents. They had classified documents they didn't have a right to have. There's evidence they may have been involved in encouraging someone to lie to investigators. No raids were done of their offices. There's more than enough evidence by that this Justice Department and this FBI have. Can't blame it on Obama. Point is that the Justice Department and FBI more than enough evidence to arrest Hillary Clinton now over her mishandling of classified information and other crimes. But they don't want to take that extraordinary step. But they're happy to target President Trump. So this is why President Trump should consider pardoning everybody. And I know people will scream about it, but and it's life. He can pardon people by virtue of his office. The Constitution gives him that right. Comey wants to impeach him or indict him. There's no doubt about it. He's found no evidence of collusion. In fact, there's no evidence even of obstruction of justice, which supposedly was the other issue he was looking at. You know why I think that's the case? Because why else would Comey have been allowed to get this book out there? We've sued, by the way, for records about the approval of this book. Isn't that interesting that the Justice Department approved the publication of this book that used documents that looks like that he stole from the FBI? FBI records on the President of the United States that he concocted, I think. But Mueller wouldn't let him go out there if he was a key witness against President Trump in a criminal case. I don't think even Comey would have done the book if he thought he was needed as a witness, which suggests that there is no obstruction charge to be had against President Trump. Shut it down. Shut it all down. Just today, just before I came on this, came before the camera now, of course it's Friday, so on Friday you always got to be alert to what's going on in Washington because the politicians and the bureaucracies always like to put out bad news on Fridays. Sure enough, the Department of Justice Inspector General put out information that put out the report on Andrew McCabe. Now, Andrew McCabe was the FBI #2 who was fired by Attorney General Sessions because of lack of candor. And so you have this IG report that explores it in detail. And what had happened is there were these stories about Andrew McCabe being conflicted potentially because of his money, the money his wife had gotten from Hillary Clinton's ally Terry McAuliffe in her race for office. And secondly, there was talk about, the FBI was in on efforts to suppress Clinton investigations. Well, he had reason to respond to that to protect himself personally, and he authorized the leak of information confirming the existence of an investigation into the Clinton Foundation. And the IG found that he lied to Comey about it, and he lied repeatedly to investigators in the Justice Department and FBI about it. And that's the reason he was fired, lack of candor under oath, which I think is a crime, which leads to the question whether he's going to be prosecuted or not. Now, Comey was concerned about the leak, and he had a conversation with McCabe about it, and Comey says McCabe gave him the impression he didn't leak it. McCabe says he told Comey he did leak it, and it was authorized by him because he is technically able to leak materials. I guess they're authorized leaks. Only in government do you have authorized leaks. So what's interesting about the IG report is that McCabe essentially calls Comey a liar, and Comey essentially calls McCabe a liar. So I'll leave it to you to figure out who's telling the truth. Someone pointed out that when McCabe was fired, Comey came out and said he had 2 decades of distinguished service, and suggesting he shouldn't have been fired. Well, it shows you that Comey's judgment isn't all that good because this report suggests he should have been fired. And what's also interesting in the report is that McCabe recounts a conversation that's confirmed by at least another witness with the Department of Justice in August of 2016, where Justice Department official, I haven't figured out the name who the name of the official is yet. The IG conveniently left that out. Told McCabe that they didn't want the FBI doing anything on the Clinton Foundation during the campaign. So we've got this IG report talking about McCabe's lies, but the real big story, which I'm sure the liberal media won't focus on, but I'm telling you about, is that there's this new evidence that the Department of Justice under Barack Obama and Loretta Lynch intervened or attempted to intervene to stop a Clinton Foundation investigation. The other thing in the IG report is that there are text messages that Andrew McCabe had about his recusal and other issues. We haven't gotten one text message in numerous Freedom of Information Act lawsuits from Andrew McCabe. It looks to me like the FBI has been covering it up and withholding them on purpose from us. So another FBI cover-up. I mean, this has been a busy week. Cover-up, abuse of power by 2 FBI directors, Mueller and Comey. And of course, Wray allowing his agents to be misused to target the president like he did earlier this week. The FBI and DOJ think they are not answerable to anyone, and least alone the President of the United States. And the President should remind them they work for him and to stop these abuses of the rule of law. And I don't believe that that Mueller should be able to do, complete his work. Well, if his work means targeting people who otherwise wouldn't be targeted with criminal investigations, I think there's an obligation to stop him from that work. So while they're investigating payments to Stormy Daniels over at the Justice Department, and James Comey is writing books making fun of the president's marriage. I mean, that's how low class it gets in that book. You've got major issues, as I implied, with the Clinton Foundation. We've got the Uranium One scandal, which there's no evidence anything's going on that. So what does Judicial Watch do? We do, again, the heavy lifting, the work that no one else wants to do in town. And so Judicial Watch has sued the State Department and the Justice Department for Uranium One documents. Now, this Uranium One, to bring you up to speed, is the issue of Clinton Foundation donors giving money to the Clinton Foundation, tens of millions of dollars, in exchange for help and securing the agreement of the Obama administration to the Russia takeover of 20% of the uranium market here in the United States. Now, the dirty little secret is the Obama administration knew this was going on beginning, I think, in 2009, yet did nothing. They knew the money was going to the Clinton cash machine. They did nothing. They knew they were trying to influence the decision. They let the decision go forward. And they didn't tell Congress about the corruption. And Judicial Watch has been on this since 2008. We exposed in 2014 how Renaissance Capital, a Russia firm linked to Uranium One, gave $500,000 to Bill Clinton personally. So that, just think about this when you hear about Russia. A Russia company tied to the government Uranium One gave money personally to Bill Clinton while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. And you know they're married, so you give money to Bill, it's like giving him money to Hillary. And the State Department, we found the documents, had no problem with that. And of course, now we know the Justice Department, people like Mueller, Comey, Lynch, Holder, all knew that was going on and did nothing. And you would think this would be a reason for the Justice Department and the FBI to show that they believe in the rule of law. They'd be vigorously investigating this, and we'd see all sorts of evidence of grand juries, but no. So what Judicial Watch has done, we had to sue in federal court the State Department and the State Department and the Justice Department for Uranium One documents. We had to sue for the records. I don't know what Congress is doing on Uranium One. Do you? Let me know if you find out. But in the meantime, we're going to do the work. And then, and compare and contrast the lack of interest in this with the obsessive focus on Russia collusion and Donald Trump. All the evidence of Russia collusion is tied to Hillary Clinton with Uranium One, but also her use of Russia intelligence to get Donald Trump and launder it into the DOJ, FBI, who then misled a FISA court by not telling the FISA court that it was the Clinton DNC that came up with this Russia stuff to justify an investigation or spying on Carter Page, who was a former Trump aide. And you can guarantee that dossier was used for other reasons, as Mr. Comey confirms, to go in and rattle the incoming president of the United States. I tell you, I've been at Judicial Watch 20 years almost now. 20 years. There's no scandal comparable in the 20 years I've been here. Let's go back to other scandals. Iran-Contra, not much of a scandal compared to this. Watergate, not much of a scandal compared to this. Teapot Dome scandal, not much of a scandal compared to this. There's been no scandal in American history where you've had the government agencies like you've had here be used so directly to target a president of the United States. Or in the case of the year 2016, a candidate for president of the United States. Simply nothing, there's nothing like it. And the people responsible for this are going around on book tours. Hillary Clinton, James Comey. Barack Obama, I don't know what he's doing. He's doing well for himself. I think he's getting $500,000 a speech or something like that, which is a racket too. And President Trump is still being targeted by this. So before I go, I want to talk about Syria. Now, Syria is a big issue because we're at war. And we're about to go to war in a more significant way, if the president's to be believed, over these alleged chemical attacks. It looks like the Syrian regime used chemical weapons again. So how did this all begin? It all began with the Obama administration and Libya. The collapse of Libya gave fuel to the fire in Syria. How do we know this? Because we have the documents. Judicial Watch found in 2000, that's 3 years ago now, May 10th, 2015, or May 18th, 2015. We found the documents from the Defense Department showing two things. The Obama administration knew arms were going from Benghazi to Syria. And the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, also was warning about the rise of ISIS and the coming war in Syria as well, and noted that the West was supporting terrorists in the internal battles in Syria. It's just incredible stuff. And I encourage you to go to our website and get it. I'm assuming we can link. I tweeted about it earlier this week, but we'll provide a link to the story here. And I encourage you to look at the documents, because the documents are killer. Here. This is what they look like. They don't black things out because it looks bad now, so they just white them out. But these are heavily redacted documents from the Department of Defense that show what I said they show. And I'm going to quote them for you. Weapons from the former military stockpiles were shipped from the port of Benghazi, Libya, to the port of Banias and the port of Borja Islam, Syria. They were shipped during late August 2012. Hey, that was just 1 month before the terrorist attack in Benghazi. And you know, they just weren't just vaguely aware of these arms shipments. The DIA document talked about the types: sniper rifles, RPGs, and 125 millimeter and 155 millimeter howitzer missiles. The numbers for each weapon: 500 sniper rifles, 100 RPG launchers, and 300 total rounds, and approximately 400 howitzers. So I tell you, if you know the number of missiles and bullets going out, or the number of missiles and weapons going out, you're in a position to stop it. The document's vague as to whether that was actually going on under U.S. auspices. But isn't that interesting? So you had Benghazi being a way station for arms shipments to Syria. Now, who were they helping? It looks like they were helping the opposition in Syria, which was driven by Al-Qaeda and other extremist Muslim groups, according to the document, that were supported by the West, i.e. the United States. AQI, Al-Qaeda Iraq, are the major forces, the Muslim Brotherhood, another terrorist front group, major forces driving the insurgency in Syria. And the consequences included the grave danger of the rise of ISIS. And again, all of this is connected in Benghazi because these documents came to us from a Benghazi FOIA request. The deterioration of the situation has dire consequences on the Iraqi situation are as follows. This creates the ideal atmosphere for Al-Qaeda Iraq to return to its old pockets in Mosul and Ramadi, and will provide a renewed momentum under presumption of unifying the jihad among Sunni Iraq and Syria and the rest of the Sunnis in the Arab world against what it considers one enemy, the dissenters. ISI, which was the then acronym for the Islamic State, could also declare an Islamic State through its union with other terrorist organizations in Iraq and Syria, which will create grave danger in regards to unifying Iraq and the protection of its territory. And the dire consequences, most of which are blacked out, include, and this isn't blacked out, renewing facilitation of terrorist elements from all over the Arab world entering into the Iraqi arena. There you had it. Obama was warned in 2012, 4 years before he left office, that Benghazi was being used to send arms into Libya, and that the situation in Syria was going to lead to increased terrorism. So they were supporting a situation that they were warned was going to lead to increased terrorism with arms. So if you want to know how this all began and how this situation has led to a confrontation potentially between the United States and Russia and Syria, it goes back here to Benghazi, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, who saw, by the way, the destruction of the Gaddafi regime as a capstone to their foreign policy. And that's why they lied about the internet video causing the attack on our consulate in Benghazi, because to admit there were terrorists there would have blown all of this wide open in terms of Libya having become a safe haven for terrorists. Arms shipments were going to terrorists out of Benghazi and Libya to Syria. They didn't want any of that coming out. So that's why they lied about the video. That's why they refused to protect people on the ground there, because to send military there would have been a mission of failure. And it led to this war in Syria that is, when you hear the left complain about refugees, tell them to blame Obama and blame Hillary Clinton and all the needless deaths that have resulted from that war. The U.S. was supporting the terrorists there. Before anyone was let in on it in the United States, they were doing this secretly with arms shipments out of Benghazi. So think about that the next time you hear Syria mentioned in the media. And as we devote lives, personnel, and munitions and taxpayer resources to trying to clean up the mess there. So I appreciate your patience this week. It's been a tremendous week, a lot to go over, but it needs to be gone over because there's a rule of law crisis here in Washington, D.C. It is undermining the Republic. It is targeting the President of the United States in a way that is wholly improper and contrary to everything that we want our government to be. And so you can trust your Judicial Watch to tell the truth, no matter how unpopular here, and to use our resources to investigate what's really going on and get the documents out and hold the government to account, because no one else seems to be doing much of that here in this sad city. So thanks again for joining us, and I'll see you next week.